Welcome to Stay Sparked. We are three longtime friends here to share inspiration with you, aim to light you up. I'm Betsy.
I'm Halcyon.
And I'm Janus.
On today's episode, we talk about intoxication.
We talk about when can we know when a tool becomes a crutch?
And how do we evolve our relationship with intoxicants to become the best version of ourselves?
Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to Stay Sparked. We like to start our broadcast with sparks of gratitude. So, Betsy, what are you feeling gratitude for today?
I am so grateful for my flow toys. I love flow toys. I do staff and flow flags and poi and hula hoop and some other fun toys. And I love them because they really give me a tool to access flow state. Flow state is such a powerful place to get into. And I try to do one of my flow toys at least once a day, even just for a few minutes, and it feels so good. So I just used my flow toys right before this recording. So I'm feeling in the flow and really grateful for that.
Nice.
Awesome.
Little morning hula hoop session. Sounds pretty good. We got to get you one of those, Halcyon.
Guess what I'm doing below the screen that you can't see?
Wow, you're good. You're
Wow.
good. Completely still from the top up. It's all happening down here. I am feeling gratitude today for my friends. I'm finding a new place to live, and I put out a call for some to my friends and communities, let them know. And I got a lot of instant feedback on all these leads and potentials and possibilities. And it was just another reminder that my friends are awesome. So thanks, friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yay.
Love friends.
What you put out, you get back.
That's right.
I like to think so.
My gratitude today is for my body. I had about a 2.5 month of experience with nerve pain that affected my back and my arm and my hand. And it was unlike anything I'd ever experienced in terms of the way I was debilitated, the way I was I'd never had an experience of just pain that did not go away no matter what I did. And so I'm so grateful for the team of helpers and healers and doctors that have been working with me. And I'm just so grateful for the state of non-pain. It's like I didn't realize how precious a non-pain moment was until there was no relief. And I hope I can hold on to this, because the mind's desire of I need this to be happy. After the pain, I don't need anything to be happy. The state of nothing is awesome.
It's a really good reminder. Yeah.
Yes. Awesome, Halcyon.
Good.
Well, speaking of soothing pain, our topic today is intoxication and inebriation and the substances and chemicals and tools and sometimes poisons that we put into our bodies to have some effect. And I need to explain from the get-go that I am saying this after celebrating my 1-year birthday yesterday, free from ketamine, GHB, and alcohol. So a year ago, I had an unhealthy relationship to those things. Now I have a abstinent relationship with those things. But I don't want to villainize or demonize or judge any of those chemicals or any chemicals. The substances are neutral, and we build relationships with them. And so I think what we want to talk to today is how in our culture, sometimes there's pressure around those things. Sometimes we can get caught up in those things. How can we use them in positive ways? When can we know that we're using them in negative ways? And just maybe share a little bit of our personal experiences with how intoxication and inebriation has been a part of our lives. I'm one who really thought that I had it. Let me take it back. I had it all together. I consider myself like a professional drug user for a while, and I handled my stuff. I was a good person in the world. I didn't miss appointments. And for years and years, I was totally at peace with the way I was using. Now, it was a daily use, and people who loved me had concern, but if you looked at my life, I was not addicted in the sense that it was affecting my life in a negative way. And so when people would say stuff like, oh, you're escaping and you're numbing things, I would be like, nope, I just have more fun. I just love it. And so it's been a really interesting journey for me after taking those things out of my life, realizing some of the ways it was affecting me that I didn't quite realize it. So now I'm stoked to be in this place where it's not a part of my life, but I still recognize that it can be an awesome tool.
I just really want to acknowledge you first because it's a journey, to have 1 year free of those substances that may have had a hold on you for quite some time. It takes commitment, it takes devotion and dedication, and it's not easy always. Whether it is an intoxicant like you've mentioned, or a food, or caffeine, or other addictive, substances, it really is it can be a challenge. So way to go. Congrats. I'm so happy for
Thank
you.
you.
It's been beautiful to be witness to you on your journey of sobriety and claiming that as you have been, doing this for the last year. And we've all been on the journey right here with you because, we've been doing this podcast for over a year. So we've watched you transform. And, one of the things that really sparks for me in hearing you speak about it is around how you had your shit together, so you weren't numbing anything or running away from anything, quote unquote. But what I can see is it's almost like a veil has lifted, right? It's like you didn't maybe even know what you were missing out on until you lifted that veil, and then things start to become more clear, right? I think that's a really big part of what happens especially with alcohol, because alcohol can tend to be like a cloud that, especially if you're using it regularly, it can just make things a little more dim or dull. You can't quite see the magic in the world, or your problems for that matter. That's why a lot of times
that's the idea.
Right, exactly. People use alcohol to be able to kind of like deal with emotions. And so that's been a lot of my contemplations lately, especially in this conversation that we're in right now around how alcohol is so widely available in our culture. It's everywhere. It's, social things revolve around it. It is very widely accepted. And it seems like there is a correlation between our relationship to our emotional process, right? Because most of us were not really trained how to express our emotions in a healthy way as adults, right? And so when something hard comes, and it's like, oh, I have all these emotions, I don't really know what to do with them or how to express them in a healthy way. So I'm just going to go ahead and just drink something that helps me just kind of relax and not actually feel it and kind of let it go and forget about it. And it's just, a way to be able to move through, because I'll give an example, like for grieving, right? A grief process, a natural grief process in the physical body usually, and can be like wailing, screaming, throwing our bodies around. Like children have tantrums, they know how to move emotions through the body, but that's not really socially acceptable for adults to be able to go like, scream and throw their arms around and like it be okay to have this somatic emotional release. And so it's like, all right, you know what? I'm just gonna like get inebriated and wasted, and then I can feel like I can sort of let loose, and maybe I'll throw my arms around and be a little belligerent because I need to figure out a way to how to process, And so it's really fascinating how there's so much more research and more discovery and more acceptability too around grief, for example, and emotional somatic processing, at least from what I can see in the profession I'm in and in the cultures that I'm in with, the evolution of humanity and where we're at. So that's some of my initial thoughts.
Yeah. Oh man, I am. So much of what you said is hitting, and I wanted to speak to what you said about the numbing and escaping. And I was so resistant, and I did not think that applied to me because that feels judgmental. It feels weak to not face your emotions. And I didn't see myself as someone who was weak. I did not see myself as someone who was not able to face struggle and hardship. And I can see now that there were way deep aspects that I was struggling with. So if you had a conversation with me about some topic, I think I could face it head on. But there were parts down deep inside me of social anxiety that was even deeper than that, is aspects of self-worth. And so without even really meaning to or thinking I was doing it, I was helping myself to avoid accessing the roots of these things that I was medicating with substances. And it's like, you say when you have a stressful thing, you have a drink. We are so trained to do that. And now that I'm not drinking, when I watch television, I'm like, oh my God. Anytime somebody walks into a room and goes, "How was your day?" "Oh, it's rough." "Want a drink?" Oh, pour me a drink. I've had a rough day. Oh, give me a drink. Oh, and it's like, oh yeah, that's just that is way more a part of our cultural training than that sounds really hard. Do you want to sit? Should I sit with you while you cry,
Yeah,
or
should
you
we
want to
take
just yell
10
about
deep
this for a
breaths
little bit?
together? Hey, I had a
Right.
rough day. Let's take some deep breaths.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
way too woo-woo. No way. Whiskey it is.
And I can see, yeah, I can see now how many times I used alcohol specifically as one that helped me to access pain and frustration that was clogged in me. So I like I can remember when the night that Trump was elected, I hit the whiskey bottle and just started bawling, crying. And I did it publicly online, and it felt so good to release the stuff. Now, I don't know if I had the capacity to get to those emotions at that time without it, but it was a tool for me at that moment. And I was able to really purge and release any of the parts of myself that were embarrassed or ashamed, and just really just surrender in that I mean, I was numbing the parts of myself that were overly self-aware and afraid of being judged. And so by numbing those parts, I was able to be fully expressed. Side note, someone took a screenshot of that night and it went viral with the hashtag liberal tears. Yes.
I think I saw that. I saw that. You had a few of those actually. You had a couple of those viral tears moments. It's interesting listening to both you guys. It kind of strikes me for the first time really how alcohol is almost an adaptogen. Like it almost brings you. It can do that numbing thing that I think we're very conscious of. That the idea of getting off work and I got to stop by the bar before I go home, which will allow me to deal with my home life, whatever that looks like. I mean, how many millions of people do that on a daily basis, Monday through Friday, at least, having to stop by and just numb themselves before they go home. But then it also has a way of accessing what's real for you, what's true for you. We all are familiar with the idea of a happy drunk or a sad drunk or an angry drunk. And I think we walk through these lives with this mask and this costume and this little bit of artifice that we put to the world, but we take a few drinks. And I really feel that the true nature comes out. It's like, oh, this person's actually kind of a happy soul at the root of it. After they drop through all their stuff, or they're really angry after a couple drinks. It's like, oh, I think they got some stuff to work out.
Mhm.
So I really feel like alcohol can be good to kind of show you, and unfortunately, in other cases, show the rest of the world who you really are and what you really have to, what's really going on with you. And I feel a good question. I'm trying to remember, I think somebody asked me this back in the day when I had stopped drinking myself. Well, I had paused drinking, I want to say. But a good question to ask yourself on a fairly regular basis is, what are you avoiding, or what are you trying to avoid? Not necessarily in regards to your substance use or abuse, but just I think it's just a good question. Certainly don't have to answer to somebody else, but it's a good question to ask yourself. What am I trying to avoid, and what am I doing to avoid that? And for me, yeah, it was a lot of childhood stuff, childhood pain that I carried into adulthood. Back in just really quickly, back in 2011 is one of those times, and I did a life assessment, kind of looked over my life and what it has been up to that point, and realized that all of my most embarrassing or awkward or painful moments that I had as a human being, those moments I had to apologize to somebody for in many occasions. So they were, each and every one of them had a alcohol component to it. I was either, buzzed or drunk or whatever, and just not acting as my best self. So I was like, all right, how about I take a break from this? Because the moderation button would just go missing on occasion. So I took about 14 months off. The idea was to take a year off and just kind of recalibrate my relationship with alcohol, which was a huge success, frankly. And ever since then, I think I can count the number of times I've been like drunk on like one hand. I just don't get drunk anymore. And it's been good. It's allowed me to kind of actually get some things done in my life. And it's important. Yeah, it's important to examine your relationship and realize that it's with relationship with substances, alcohol, what have you, and really be honest with yourself. Be like, okay, so is this enabling me? Because as you mentioned, as you guys both mentioned, these are tools. They're neutral. They're neutral. It's like, what are we doing with them? Or what are they doing to us? And if it feels like it's doing something to you, you definitely want to step back, re-examine which who's the tool and who is the user.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I was a very fun drunk. I feel like I'm really good at being intoxicated. And there was a part of me when I stopped that was scared that I wouldn't be nearly as fun. I wouldn't be nearly as entertaining. And I finally got something that many of my close friends have said to me where they're like, I really like John a lot better than I like Halcyon. Like when I'm in like entertainer mode, like I get a buzz on and I'm telling stories, and in my mind, that's the best version of me. That's the one that everyone likes, and through this journey of taking those away, the crutches and the numbness, and looking at the stuff, I'm now clear that I'm overcompensating. I really need people to like me. I'm masking a need for my own self-love. And so the entertaining, even though people are leaving the conversation like, man, that guy's great, it's not the same level of connection that I have access to now, where I'm much more present now. I'm a better listener now. Sure, I still tell great stories, I'm not going to lie, but I'm not in this kind of like energetic zone of performance that is that it took me sobriety to realize the negatives of it. It's not negative. It's a awesome part of who I am, but it keeps a part of me from connecting with others. And that's the part of like the numbing and the escaping that back then I couldn't see, and I resented people saying, and now I can see it.
So I think that's a common thing, to want to use a substance like alcohol or other chemicals to be able to feel more socially adept. That part of you that was like, yay, the fun one, and celebrating, and I can like let loose and tell stories and be silly and engage. And, there's also this deep part that is like really insecure and doesn't really know how to connect with people. And so the alcohol then helps to create that bridge. And I think that's likely why, a lot of social gatherings have those substances, because we don't always feel comfortable to come into a social setting, and it takes practice, and it takes, just a lot of different layers of our own insecurities to soften, to come into a conversation with someone else. And a little drink can help you like relax a little bit, and it's natural. And so, as you were saying, Janus, too, it's like, well, it's a tool, right? And so I definitely feel like it can be supportive to people, right? To be able to like just relax a little bit and kind of let go of some of the insecurities, and to just feel a little bit safer to be able to be expressed, because maybe those parts are shut down. And also, just like anything, there's an excess use, then it can be, detrimental to your relationships, to your health, to all kinds of things, so it's like even like social media, right? It's a tool. right? We can pop on there once in a while and gain some inspiration, and it might actually fill some need for connection or some kind of need, right? But if you're doing it every day, scrolling every day for many hours a day, then you're taking a lot of time out of your day to be going into this, as well, you have one drink every once in a while, or you have a drink every single day, right? It's a moderation, it's a tool. And so I think that, what you brought forward, Janus, too, is in that question, how is this actually serving my highest and best? Is this a tool? Is this a substance that is actually contributing to the betterment of my life? And sometimes if we're in it, it's hard to see it. Whether it's alcohol or coffee or sugar or whatever, something that might have a hook on us, nicotine, I think it is really powerful to pull up and out and see if this is in contribution to my life or maybe not. And if it's not, then how do we take the reins, right? Halcyon, you stopped a year ago. How did you do that? How do you just stop doing something that's a huge part of your life, right? That's like I said, takes commitment, takes devotion, it takes a lot of self-awareness, it takes asking for help as well, surrounding ourselves with people that support us. It is really, really important to be able to have that kind of strength to be able to first call yourself out, and second, have people in your lives and an environment that can support that, right? If you're in a habit pattern of going to the bar every day after work, that takes some effort to start to shift that habit, right? What can you do instead, right? What is the alternative? Do you go into nature? Do you call a friend? How do you do it?
Yeah, there's so much of having to let go of the person you were, because that equation worked with intoxication or in it. And when you take that out, a bunch of things that used to serve you become problematic. I want to touch on the socializing part, because it can be a tool, to help you get over insecurities, and it can be more social when you're feeling, introverted and things. And I found this really interesting shift that's happened in me, is that I think it used to give me confidence, because it would I would be numbed. I would forget about the parts of myself that I was insecure about. But the whole aspect of being insecure is because some part in your mind thinks you should be a certain way, or thinks you should be accepted in a certain way. And so you're performing, you're auditioning, basically. You're constantly auditioning and hoping that the people around you say, you got the part, and so this new kind of awareness of oh, I was always auditioning, and to going back to a new place of, can I just trust and have faith that who I am will be enough? Can I trust that I don't need to perform? Can I trust that? And honestly, that is a huge chasm for me, is letting go of what I know works, what I know, this personality, this whole identity. But when I took alcohol away, going, oh my gosh, I only was able to access that because I was forgetting that I was trying to achieve a certain thing. I was trying to be seen in a certain way. And there's this real liberation of healing enough of myself, going, I'm enough, I'm enough, I'm enough. And then it doesn't matter what the world thinks. It's like the Ram Dass quote about, you don't go into a forest and start judging the trees. It's crazy. You don't look at a cloud and go, that shape ain't right. And if you are being genuine and true, then it's a crazy person that judges you. And that requires you to be genuine with yourself. And for me personally, I think I knew that as long as I had a daily intoxication habit, that was a splinter in my psyche, that I knew that I was not being in alignment. I wasn't being the best person I was. And so it was kind of a self-fulfilling thing. I used so that I would forget that I didn't think I was enough. And part of why I didn't think I was enough is because I used. That's a really hard one to get off of.
And there it is. And there it is. Yeah, we are the easiest person in the world for us to bullshit. We are so easily fooled by ourselves. It's important. That's an important thing to remember. And it's interesting when you say halcyon that like the people, people like the halcyon. Like when somebody said to you recently, like I like John more than I like halcyon.
Mhm.
And when you were in that halcyon space, or just when you were in the space where you were like enjoying all these substances and alcohol, you believed that people like that halcyon, that people like this is the version people like, this is the person people want me to be. And turns out that wasn't always the case. There's a lot of people, like you and I have been friends a long time. I would see halcyon doing their thing. I never got that from you personally. When we were one on one, you were never on with me. Like you were always kind of who you are now. Slightly pinker, but the essence is the same. Where I would see you across the room, or I would see you at the function or on the play, I'm like, oh, halcyon is on. And even when you would be on and we would connect it, like when you're serving ice cream or whatever, it would just drop, and we would just be, you know, real, like we are now. And I remember thinking back in the day, that's interesting how he kind of drops that when we get in person, and then I would see you turn it right back on like with somebody else. Which is not to say that, oh, I'm evoking the real version of you, whatever. But I feel like we there is something that to be said for what we evoke from each other, and what we how we feel comfortable with each other. And when you get comfortable with yourself, you can show you don't you cease to care about how you look to others, how you come off to others. And I think that's what allowed you and allows people to eventually kind of overcome their addiction to these things and be like, I'm actually not fully comfortable with myself, but comfortable enough that I can go out into the world without these crutches. And people are gonna get what they get, and they're gonna like it or not. And there's something to be said for that getting comfortable in your own skin, but it starts with really some strong self inquiry to be able to realize like how comfortable we actually are with ourselves.
And that's a practice.
Mm.
Self-love is not necessarily an easy thing. It takes some effort to become our own best friend, to be loving and accepting of the parts of who we are, whether we're alone or with other people. It's definitely a practice. I personally am really lit up by that because right now I'm actually in a little private 21-day group where we are cultivating practices to help us to be kinder to ourselves, be more loving to ourselves, using affirmations and just practices to be able to keep coming back to that place of feeling comfortable being just who we are, and maybe there is something about the alcohol or different substances that help us process that. And it is a really deep journey to be able to come into that relationship with ourselves, and to, like you shared, when you come into an authentic expression of who we are, then we're comfortable, relaxed, not in a place of anxiety. I think anxiety is a far too common, unfortunately, social anxiety. It's a real
Mm.
thing. I think we've all experienced that. And sometimes a little shot of tequila will just help. No, just relax. And then it's like, well, then what other tools do we have to be able to moderate potentials for anxiety, social anxiety, excess stimulus, these different kinds of things? And so I actually would love to tune in with you guys around, well, if we are choosing to use different things, what are our options to help us relax? And, you mentioned adaptogens. I'm not sure if everyone out there knows what they are, but it is, becoming more and more available on the shelves, especially here in California. There's all these amazing drinks that have no alcohol, that have adaptogenetic herbs and all kinds of wonderful, delicious things that make it feel like you are drinking a cocktail, but it's really a mocktail. That actually has things in it to help our nervous system to either relax or to stimulate. I love seeing on menus a lot of restaurants, nicer restaurants, especially that have options instead of wine, beer, or cocktails. There's also mocktails. I recently saw one that was like a section of the menu said 0 proof. There's all these really amazing, delicious drinks because there's something really fun about when you're out and you get served up a beautiful glass that has, garnish on it, and then you're like sipping on something. I know for me, that's been one of the more challenging components because you go out and you want have something in your hand. There's something nice to hold. You get to a gathering and you're like, oh, do you want a drink? And it's like, okay, it's nice to have something that feels really kind of fancy, or like, just feels like comfortable, and it's nice to have these options. I see more and more available. Like, I went to a party recently here in San Diego, and there was a whole bar, but there was no alcohol on that bar. It was amazing. It's like, oh, this is pretty incredible. And it was actually kind of funny because the party was going on and there was like 60 people, and then this band arrived, and as they're setting up, I saw one of the band members kind of like looking around and looking for something. And so I was like, hey, can I help you find something? He goes, yeah, is there a beer? And I was like, oh, no, I don't think so. And he's like, oh, is there any cocktail or anything? I was like, oh gosh, I don't think there is. Oh, it looks like someone brought a bottle of wine for the host. Do you want some wine? He was just so shocked that there was no alcohol at this party, that there was all these really fun people. And I sent him to the bar, and he ended up making a little like sparkling drink, and it was really sweet. It felt like a cool moment to see that not all parties circle around alcohol anymore. Things are changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like
If that were me,
go ahead.
I'd have had a flask with me probably.
Yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't have even risked it. The
Yeah.
old you is like, no, I bring my own. Yeah, for me, there's definitely a physical component. I mean, I don't know if I'm using the word somatic correctly, but there's like a somatic component to this. I think that's been shown that that's why people who stop smoking end up gaining a lot of weight, because there is a hand to mouth feature that if you're not smoking, you're not doing that anymore, but your body is used to your hand going to your mouth. So you end up eating more because that's the same motion. There is, for me, what helped me, and still helps me actually. There's a lot of times where it's like, oh, I feel like I want a beer. I'm like, it's not really gonna. I don't feel like I want to drink though. I would just get something bubbly, whether it's kombucha or it's tepache, but something with bubbles in it. And I like champagne too, but I don't always want to drink champagne. So I would get something with bubbles, and that absolutely scratches that itch for me to drink something bubbly, like beer is bubbly. And then it's like, oh, I didn't want a beer. I just wanted something. I wanted the sensation of bubbles in my body. It's bubbles going down my throat. So get something bubbly. And I was like, oh, and I'm completely fine. The desire for a beer would just be gone. And I was like, oh, so
Wow.
it's not the beer, it's
Amazing.
the bubbles. That's interesting. Sometimes
That's not me. I'm like, sometimes I just want an IPA. Give
Yeah,
me those
sometimes
I was
hops.
gonna say,
yeah, sometimes I do. Sometimes I do
Like,
absolutely want an
let some
IPA.
chips. No, just give me some celery.
I think it's
Yeah, this is true.
adorable.
This is true.
It's
Sometimes it
adorable
works.
that I think it's adorable that can scratch the itch for some people. I never have a craving for a cocktail or the taste of a cocktail. I miss being fucked up. And so, like, if I went to a party, I wasn't, oh, I want to have a cocktail, man. I would probably have a few gulps from a flask before I went into a party, and then I would make sure I had enough to get the buzz I wanted when I was in there. So
Wow.
I've yet this whole year, I have not had a fake, a no zero alcohol beer. That is not what I crave. It's just,
Buzz, yeah.
it's a different thing. And that's kind of a thing that I've been, in this conversation about, people always ask me like, well, how long before during sobriety, how long was it before you could go out and be social again and you felt comfortable being social? I'm like, the problem comes if you try to go, how can I get back to being the kind of social person I was? I've had to say, I'm going to go out and I'm going to have whatever experience I have. So I'm going to go early. I'm going to have the ability to leave whenever I want and not try to have the experience I used to have. And there was some grief around that, and continues to be some grief around that. I don't I don't wander through a party with this buzz of socializing and just sharing big energy and receiving big energy. And I don't think I can access that with this chemical way, but I can be there authentically and have a different kind of rewarding experience. And I think for me, for it to work for me, it isn't about scratching old itches. It's new paths and new expectations for myself.
So powerful.
Mm,
Yes. I
that's
think
good.
that's so important to look forward, to recognize that if we are on a path of growth and evolution, who are we becoming? Right? And it can sometimes be easier to focus on who we were, what we're letting go of, and letting go of, but like really starting to look forward of who I'm becoming. Who am I without the substance? Right? Who am I in a different social scene? What do I want to embody? And I think that something here that is worth mentioning is I think that there's something really beautiful about this time we live in where there is community based around recovery. And there's so many people that are sober and that embrace that as a path. And that is actually part of the spiritual practice for a lot of people. It's pretty incredible. I grew up going to AA meetings with my dad and my
Okay.
stepmom. So I got to have firsthand experience as a child, getting to see all these people that were gathering together and supporting each other and coming to places of, their vulnerability and their authentic sharing and their kindness and challenges and all of that. And it's been so cool to see how more and more people are open about that. I remember when I was young, it was like kind of a hush hush thing. Like you couldn't really talk too much about it. There was like code words around being in recovery. Now it's so much more widely acceptable, and it's cool to be in recovery. I see people posting about it all the time. They, this many days sober. I have a friend that is 11 years sober. I have another friend that is like, 7 years, you're a year. It's a celebration. It's really pretty amazing to live at a time where there is so much community support for these powerful choices, you know. So I just really wanted to put a little spotlight on that.
Yeah, cool. That's a real kind of a hidden gift to be able to. I'm sure you felt a certain type of way, like having to go to AA meetings as a child, frankly. But I think it's to be exposed to that at an early age and to kind of have some language around that has really, I would imagine, served you pretty well into
Yeah,
adulthood.
the smell of coffee and cigarettes is definitely deeply imprinted. Every time I
Sure.
smell coffee and cigarettes, I'm like, oh, okay, yes.
Hmm.
What is the saying? Each day a new beginning,
Yeah, something like
like
that.
remembering the
Mhm.
12 steps.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I understand that this is looping kind of back to what we were talking about before, but I trust you will be able to kind of bring us back into the moment, Betsy. But I wanted to get your kind of your take on your journey with, substances and experiences and alcohol, and what has that been like for you? Have there been any issues that you had to address at any point
Mm.
with your
Oh, yeah.
usage?
Yeah, well, yes, I grew up in going to some of these meetings, but then by the time I was 14, I was drinking and using all kinds of different drugs, psychedelics, not any of the hard things, but I was smoking weed really young. By the time I was in college, I had, a pretty heavy drinking practice, and much of my socializing was around drinking, the typical college scenario of beer pong every
Mm,
weekend and going to the bars. And it was quite unfortunate, that blacking out was not, was semi-common. I blacked out quite a few times.
mm.
Unfortunately, had multiple DUIs as well. Thank
Oh,
God no
wow.
one was hurt. It was very, very intense time of my life. And, even just being in this conversation, I'm like really looking at like, why? Why did I go so hard at that time of my life? What was it that I really needed to feel like I wanted to drink so much? And, in the reflection of it, it really did feel like there was unexpressed emotions around frustration, resentment. I didn't really want to be where I was. I went to a college to appease my dad's request. I didn't really want to be there, and so I was just kind of a little bit of a rebel. And I guess I thought just drinking would support that. And it was also very socially acceptable. That was a huge part of what we did in college, especially, and in high school. You know, tons of us had fake IDs. We were going to the bar. Growing up in Ohio, you know, that's what you do socially. You know, what is there to do? You go to the bar. And so I remember when I finally made a shift in my life and recognized that I didn't have to be there, that I could make a choice on my own. I could go to a college that I really wanted to. I was able to shift out of that. And when I moved to Arizona and went to a massage school. And I started to learn about healing and about energy. And I started to shift some of my drinking habits. Obviously, there was a little bit of a different social dynamic, you know, when I'm going to a university where there's lots of drinking and socializing in that way versus a massage school. The environment was very different. So naturally, my habits started to change. And then the biggest shift for me was when I moved to California and I met the Burning Man culture. My first burner party I went to, it was like, wait a second, we can gather and have fun and not be at a bar? Like that just felt like such a foreign concept to me. You know, and I started to find other ways to gather with people that was not focused around drinking. Yeah, there are some alcohol at parties and whatnot. People are drinking, but it wasn't focused around alcohol. Whereas, like when I would go back to Ohio, I even saw it after I had moved and I came back and was like, hey, you want to get together? Yeah, what bar do you want to meet at? And that was like the only option. Like, oh, okay, I guess, yeah. Or maybe we go to dinner, or you want to go to the bar afterwards? Like, oh, great. And now here I am. I don't remember the last time I went to a bar. You know, it's just not even part of the scene in my life. And I don't know very many people that actually go to bars. And so I think that that was a huge shift for me in the environment and the people that I spend time with, and just starting to pull the alcohol out of the center of the socializing and then start to be able to make choices differently. And so I'm very grateful for that time. It was like wild, exuberant time. It was a very unhealthy time. I didn't know hardly anything about who I was. I didn't know anything about nutrition. I didn't really realize the impact that it was having on my body until I started to stop and I started to get more in shape and healthier. I even look back at photos of myself. I was a little chubbier and I was like, you know, just yeah, it's just a different person. And so I'm also right there with you, Janus, too. Is like I don't drink these days to have a buzz. I don't remember the last time I even was drunk. But now I am grateful to be able to have a relationship with alcohol that I can sip a glass of wine and enjoy the notes and enjoy the flavor of a really fine tequila, for example, or have one IPA at dinner just to like satiate, you know, that sense of like I don't know, whatever an IPA does. It gives me some fulfillment. And it feels really nice to be able to have the reins of my control mechanisms around how much I want to drink and how much I don't.
Hmm. That's great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I heard something recently, and maybe one of you said it to me. But the difference, there's a difference between addiction and enlightenment. Addiction is a narrow, you know, what brings you happiness is narrow. Whereas when it comes to enlightenment, what brings you happiness is expansive. There's so once you become like enlightenment is not this place you reach, it is a journey. And once you kind of let go or move away from the addiction more towards the enlightenment, the expansion, you're able to take enjoyment out of these same things without having to go overboard. Like you're able to have like one drink and get the same fulfillment that earlier would take you 6 or 7 drinks to get to. And I think that's the, you know, that fucked upness that I just want to feel something. You know, it's like you're more readily available to feel something. So you don't need to do nearly as much of the thing. Once you kind of reframe, you know, your approach to it. So it's so it's an important thing that the bigger we become, the less reliant I think we become. on, all these substances, all these tools.
Yeah. Yeah. That idea of addiction narrowing the circle of what can bring you joy, and enlightenment increasing the circle of what can bring you joy. That I find that to be really significant for me on keeping on my path, because I still have memories of how fun, getting intoxicated is, but I also remember how more and more the the that was the thing I craved, or anything that would be fun, I wanted to add intoxication to it. Or I would be at a party and go, this is kind of fun here. Rather than stick it out and see who else I'll talk to, I'll go home because I know I'll have a good time if I do that.
Mm.
My partner asked me recently, like, how much of your addiction was seeking kind of these spiritual enlightenment experiences and divine cosmic things, which is a part of my experience, and how much of it was escape. And so that's a hard question to answer, and I'm sure that's the right way to ask it, because um, addiction, it was when the balance went out, like using substances as a way to access experiences or to access states or access parts of yourself is a beautiful thing. But then as addiction narrowed my circle, that became all I wanted to do. And it became the priority. And it became the thing that if a partner in the past said, it's either me or your drugs, I'd be like, well, it's been nice. Goodbye, partner. Like this is, I have a dedication to this. And that's kind of when I started to realize that that I had an addict's brain, like that I was starting to make decisions and make choices. And since you mentioned earlier, like, how did you stop? I just went briefly, I'll share, and I'll say that I'll put a link in the show notes to a longer explanation of my kind of addiction journey. But I got my heart broken, and someone told me some really hard things about myself that I couldn't see, and was saw that I was out of integrity, and realized that story I had, that it's fine that I do all this stuff because I'm still a good person. They showed me ways that I had been dishonest and ways that I had been sneaky, and I couldn't believe it. Like I couldn't, I didn't see it in myself. And then, but she pointed out, like, yes, I have been hiding things. I have been doing things without telling people, not outright lying, but sneaky. And that just messed. I'm like, I cannot be that person. And so I decided I am going to do whatever I can to get over this and become a person that is, first of all, is worthy in the eyes of the person who dumped me. I'm like, I want to be a good enough person. And then that kind of migrated to just, I want to be a worthy person to my friends, my family, and a future partner. And it was the dedication to that it kept me pushing to do things like I started seeing two therapists, started to figure out aspects of early childhood stuff that was still affecting me. I went to Betsy and said, tell me anything that's helped you because you are a happy person. And, went to see healers and do practices and read things. And it was all of these steps of saying yes to everything, to breath work, to healers, some of which were awesome, some of which weren't for me. And then slowly recognizing, I now can see what I've been numbing, and then trying to reparent and work on that stuff. And so, but it continues to be a process, and but it took making the decision and then just trusting that I don't know how long it's going to take, but I will get to a place that will be better, even though I couldn't see it at the time.
There's a conversation I had with a dear friend recently, and the idea of approaching our days or our lives or our actions with an idea of what our favorite version of ourself looks like. What is the favorite version of myself do? What does that person have for breakfast? What does that person do with their days? What is that, all these actions. So kind of approach it like that. And it can, if you kind of dedicate yourself to that or commit to it, it's a really great way to make some profound changes in life. And it can approach your intake with substances. But I was talking with my friend about this, and he's like, yeah, the best version of myself likes a couple glasses of wine every night. Like, Okay, fantastic. If that is a real and true thing for you, by all means, go with it. As you know, as long as that's not feeding any sort of bad behavior, then I think it's fine. There's nothing wrong with using this stuff as long as as long as we are doing it mindfully, as long as we are doing it consciously. We're not just completely on autopilot when we come home and we crack open a beer or pour a glass of wine or a shot of tequila. As long as we're focused on this thing, be like, this is me enjoying my margarita. And I like to enjoy my margaritas. I do love a margarita. But I think as long as we're approaching these things like mindfully with awareness, there's really nothing wrong with a lot of this stuff. It's that autopilot aspect of it where, you know, I go to Burning Man, so I'm going to be taking these things, you know, these substances or whatever. And it's funny that reminds me of I did one Burning Man completely sober because I was getting ready to not be sober down in the Amazon jungle like right afterwards. So I was on dieta for the entire week. So I was sober for the week, the one and only time I did that. And I got to say, I didn't really enjoy that year. I kind of felt like the playa for me needs that enhancement for me to really kind of dive into it, you know, because there's an element of staying up all night, and drugs are great for that. And so I wasn't able to kind of stay up all night and have that experience. And when I would share that with people, the vast majority of people would look at me like, wow, my sober burn was like the best one I ever had. And I got a lot of feedback from a number of people that I would share my experience with, and almost uniformly people were like, wow, I did a burn sober and it was amazing. Or I've done every burn sober and it was awesome. I'm like, huh, all right, maybe
There's
that's something
here.
maybe there's something here about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I had mine was like that, the last one. And it was a completely different experience to have that kind of spaciousness and rest. And there were so many moments where I was like, I'm so grateful I'm sober right now. You get to really experience it in a totally different way.
Yeah. Yeah, sobriety is underrated, people.
It is.
Well, I'll say, just in the spirit of being honest and transparent, this was my first sober burn, and I really missed being intoxicated at the burn.
Yeah, but you were there for the mud burn too.
Yes,
that's true.
Important caveat. Important
but it also highlights the kind of what is to be expected on the path is that and I'm still going through this place of transitioning into embracing new things versus wishing things were like they used to be. You know, going someplace and going, oh, I miss being XYZ is hard to let go of in your brain, instead of seeking out what's the new thing I can do here. And I wasn't really, I struggled with that at the burn this year.
Yeah, well, you were still really new on your journey of sobriety. It was only, a few months in, so
yeah.
It was still up very early stages. So it's a little stumbling, when you start something new, so I think that this is a really deep and rich conversation, and I just really want to honor all of you listeners who are being here with us, and knowing that we are all each at a different stage of our relationships with different substances. We are by no means any experts on this topic. We're just sharing from our own personal experience, our own personal perspective. So we do hope, as always, that as you are listening, it might open up some perspectives for you in your own journey in relationship to different intoxicants and substances, because it's very much a part of our world, and we all get to make choices based on our own authentic connection. And so in the spirit of that, some closing sparks.
Sure. I wanted to share in closing that, my patterns and habits worked for me until they didn't. And I think it's a good to check in occasionally, and just because it's the way it's been, it can shift into something that no longer works for you. And that's a tough place. And then you got to start asking the questions that we've been talking about today of like, what am I not facing? What am I avoiding? And a part of that facing things that has become a mantra for me lately is the idea of seeking growth over comfort. Growth over comfort. Because to me, getting high, getting intoxicated was always a way to seek comfort, to feel better, to make the social situation easier, to make the night better, to just, and it was an easy access to feeling better. But in doing so, I was sacrificing a whole bunch of growth. And so the growth path is more difficult, and but it's the one that you can build on and build on and build on, uh and that's the warrior path. And so I kind of have to keep reminding myself, like, what kind of person do you want to be? Do you want to be the kind of person that continually seeks comfort and avoids their growth? That is no, no. And if I can just keep making that choice, then I can fall into the kind of confidence that allows me to be without anxiety. So it kind of just keeps feeding itself.
Yeah, well said. Well said. And another version for that, it's a closing spark for me. Another version of that is, the concept of let go or be dragged. Like life has an idea for you. Like I do believe that we are on a path, and it's easy to get into a groove where everything is awesome and I want this to continue forever. And so when things start to shift for us for whatever reason, we tend to like, no, I actually like that. I actually enjoy that. That's fun for me. And it's like, no, life is taking you in a different direction. And the more we hold on to these things, whether through habit or we just prefer it to be the way it is, things become painful. And getting dragged through life is painful. But when we float more, steer less, as a friend of mine likes to say, we are likely going to enjoy the results. It can be a bit uncomfortable, and there's that space of kind of being in that void of not of as the new thing is coming in. Sometimes we're left feeling like, I don't know what is going on here, but we very quickly are shown like, okay, your path is going this way. And I think our usage of alcohol and substances can be part of that. Often is part of that, where it's just, if it's not working for you anymore, let it not work for you anymore, and let go of this thing. And if you need help, get help to do that. But let go, and you are going to very, very likely enjoy where you end up at. But the concept goes back to what you're saying, Halcyon, like the growth choice. And frankly, it's a more interesting story as opposed to just a new thing. So yeah, so make the choice that makes it a better story later.
Love that. My closing spark is in reference to a book. It's called Stealing Fire. It's a really great book, great read. It's a couple of authors. We'll put it in the show notes. I think Jamie Wheeler, and I'm blanking on the other author, but it's really a beautiful outline of our human tendency to seek some kind of inebriation, intoxication, states of ecstasis, whether that's through drug use, psychedelics, or adrenaline junkie type people, even animals that seek that kind of inebriation or ecstatic states. It's really insightful. If you haven't read it, it's a beautiful read, and I feel I've gained a lot out of that. I think that there is something inside of each of us that desires to expand into other states or explore different states, and so that'll be my closing spark, is Stealing Fire. If you haven't read it, check it out.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about that book. It's on my list.
I have one more spark. I have to share one more spark. The sparks are making sparks. It's just because this is something that really continues to help me is the question of what's at stake. That what are the things that if you can know inside you that you have some patterns and uses that maybe are not ideal or not healthy, just asking, well, what's at stake? What is it keeping me from? And for decades, I knew that certain aspects of my life were being compromised, and I was happy with that choice, that I was fine with it, and until I wasn't, and then kept a list on the wall of the things that would be out of my reach if I continued my old patterns. And it's an easy one. What's at stake? What's at stake? What's at stake? And that can be used for anything that you're trying to keep yourself motivated to. What's at stake? Okay. All right. Easier to make the decision.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I would like to share where we can find one another online. Can I start with saying I will put in the show notes my intoxication journal, and then send you to my brand new, freshly refurbished personal site, which is now at lifestudent.com. Lifestudent.com has all my
Oh,
links and t-shirts and gratitude circles and coaching and all the good stuff. So come have a lookie and tell me how beautiful it is. Or
amazing.
yes, no matter what, tell me how beautiful it is. I'm very vain.
Well, I love that. Congratulations. Lifestudent.com.
Thanks.
That's so wonderful. We almost called this podcast Life Student. Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you, Halcyon. I'll jump in. You can find me on poweraffirmation.com, where you can find the journal that is really a tool to help people to get into a better relationship with themselves, their thoughts, reprogramming belief systems. And there's lots of audio affirmations on there as well. I'm working on a course. There's some cards coming. That is one of my wonderful passions, to help people to cultivate that healthy dialogue, inner dialogue. And then you can also learn more about the modalities that I offer in on my website, finklehoo.com. I do body work and energy work and intuitive coaching. So check me out. Find me on Instagram, of course, too.
Fantastic. We're going to check you out, Betsy. Oh, cool. I have a nutritional supplement company called NuWorld Nutritionals, spelled NU World Nutritionals, and we have some mushroom-based products that are designed to improve and elevate your state of mind. My partner calls it a spa day for your brain, and they help with focus, learning, memory, retention, overall mood elevation. Definitely puts you in a positive mood. Can help with things like early onset dementia and anything neurological. Is actually very good for all of that stuff. So you can find us online. Check it out, nuworldnutritionals.com. That's NU Nutritionals.com, and you can use the code SPARKED for 10% off of all of our products. So, Betsy, you have an affirmation to send us off with.
I would be happy to. Yes. Okay. Spirit of this conversation and some of the sparks that have come through, I'd love to just bring through an affirmation to support the integration of inspiration. So go ahead and close the eyes. Take the affirmation is, I make healthy choices every day in every way. I am making healthy choices every day in every way. I am aware of the substances I put in my body, and I choose mindfully. I am aware of substances I put into my body, and I choose mindfully. I am mindful. I am mindful. I am mindful. I am mindful. And just taking a deep breath continuously, coming back to that centered space of awareness of who we are, knowing that we have the power to choose our thoughts, the power to choose our actions, and we get to really keep returning to the highest and best choices. I love you guys. Thank you so much for listening out there. Thank you, my Spark brothers.
Stay spark, people.
Find us on Instagram at Stay Sparked and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts.
Thanks so much for helping us spread these sparks.